We are back with another weekly Forex forecast. Welcome traders. Let's begin with the US dollar, the DXY. So like I've been talking about, we reacted off of this very old weekly area of demand right here. You can see beautiful move off of it, even the second time. But more importantly, this dotted line you see here, this is a 1 month area of demand. And that is why I have been bullish every time prices come back to this weekly area of demand. Yes, we are kind of reaching these highs here. I am expecting the DXY and the US dollar to rise, and here is why. If you look at a daily time frame, we recently broke a daily downward trend line by peaking above it. To me, it looked like this was some sort of fake out to the upside before we ended up pushing back down. And this has left us with a clear area of potentially resistance before our supply zone. I want to see another reaction off of this area first to really prove that this is a resistance area, meaning there will be liquidity here, at least as far as how I see the markets. So I think if that happens, I think this is a high probability daily area of supply at 99.80. Again, if we can get a reaction off of this liquidity area. So I am expecting price to push up on the dollar to target that daily liquidity. It has been a little bit tricky though here on the 1 hour chart. I had this 1 hour downward trend earlier with that arrow. I'm not going to call that a downward trend. I mean, actually, if I'm looking at it again, you can clearly see we do have some sort of downward trend here. However, just the overall appearance of this does appear to be kind of sideways to me, but this 1 hour downward trend line is definitely going to be kind of our guide to determine where the dollar is going to be headed. As long as the downward trend line is holding, obviously we could expect price to push down. But if we break this trend line cleanly and create some sort of peak and valley and a higher high there, we will have a nice upward trend line. And to me, that is going to indicate again on the daily time frame that we will be targeting that liquidity. So I can't deny that the dollar is definitely looking weak as I'm speaking right now with this downward trend and trend line in play as well on the 4 hour time frame. It'll be interesting to see what takes place around that trend line. Obviously, a break of this 4 hour downward trend line, that's going to be a bullish sign as well for sure on the DXY. So I will be watching both the 4 hour and the 1 hour downward trend lines to determine if price is going to target this daily liquidity. And for now, since the weekly and the monthly demand is in control, that is where I personally think the dollar is headed. I think we are headed at least to 90 to up to that daily liquidity and maybe even higher after we target the liquidity. So for now, I will be watching the 1 hour downward trend line and the 4 hour downward trend line. Looking at the forecast for the euro US dollar, clearly just basing out here on the weekly time frame. So very indecisive after we got this massive explosive move up here. A pullback down the weekly demand is going to be fantastic, but obviously really no signs of that just yet. And on the daily time frame, obviously it's the inverse of the DXY. We have that potential support down below. I want to see that reaction off of it to give you more confidence in that daily demand down at 114. But all shorts, profit margin is anywhere below this liquidity here, all the way down to that daily demand if you are bearish. I really don't see any fresh supply above or anything, so I don't really see any shorting opportunities potentially on this daily time frame. The chart here on the 1 hour chart, it's kind of interesting. You can see we have what in my opinion is a upward trend line here on the 1 hour time frame. So if you are bullish, if you think, hey Kevin, you're completely wrong, I want to trade in long, I don't think we're going to target that liquidity, that's fine if you have that opinion. Everybody has their own opinion, and that's what makes up a market. Obviously, some of you might agree with my analysis, some of you might not. And on the 1 hour time frame, we have this 1 hour trend line. So if you are bullish, I would just be trading with this 1 hour trend line on a 5-minute time frame. As long as this trend line's holding, it's going to be good. But if we break the trend line, any supply there, it's going to be a nice trading setup again to target that liquidity down below. And before we target that liquidity, what I think we could see is on this 4 hour chart, we have more liquidity on the 4 hour time frame. I want to see another reaction off the support area because we already got a basing here and a reaction. So I want to see a third. That would just be giving me more confidence. But this 4 hour demand zone, this is part of that overall daily liquidity, that daily support I was saying. So I do think this zone could be good for a 1-to-1, maybe a 1-to-2 trade. So I'd be very aggressive with trade management on this setup. Could price blast off from the zone? Absolutely. But I'd rather be safe than sorry. Again, I think we could target this liquidity on the 4 hour chart, maybe get a small move before we end up pushing down and targeting the overall daily liquidity that we were just referring to. So I think we could see a small move off of this 4 hour demand zone if you are bullish. But again, I'd be very aggressive with my trade management off of that 4 hour area of demand. All right, on to the forecast for gold. Everybody knows gold has been on an absolute tear for a long time now. Unfortunately, I just haven't really seen any high quality setups as much as I would have liked to have seen. On the daily time frame, obviously that downward trend line, that downward move here, really evident here on this daily time frame. And where do we pull back into? Where are we reacting off of? Well, we're actually reacting off of my daily demand zone at 40.23. This daily zone was called out in last week's weekly Forex forecast. So make sure you guys like and subscribe to my channel if you want to get more forecasts so we can see potentially where price is going to be turning around in the future. I personally do not think it's a coincidence that we turned around exactly at this zone. Again, video proof. Go back and watch last week's forecast. And again, I'd appreciate a like if you haven't yet on this video. So daily demand's in control with an overall upward trend. To me, this is looking like a pretty good dip buying opportunity on gold. Now on the 1 hour time frame, let's see what's taking place. We clearly broke this downward trend line. Unfortunately, I just don't have any demand here as far as a trading setup goes, but this is a pretty bullish sign. When we break a 1 hour downward trend line as we contact a daily area of demand, obviously the only way a daily demand zone can react to the upside is if a 1 hour downward trend line gets broken, which we got just here. However, I didn't really see that many good setups here, nothing that really stood out to me. But if you are bullish, what I would be waiting for, I think, is one of the better options is to simply wait for this high to be removed. If we can wait for that high to be removed, we will have a 1 hour trend line here. Then at that point, this trend line will be our guide for longs to the upside on the day trading timeframes. But we need to see that high removed first. I cannot stress that enough. And if we break this low, that's going to be a pretty bearish signal, in my opinion. I think that at that point, we could be breaking this low and potentially even headed even lower on gold. So that would be unfortunate. But that's what I'll be watching for this week. Basically the high and the low here on the 1 hour chart to really determine direction. Even if we go up, like I am predicting, because again, I'm predicting we're going to go up on gold because of the daily demand is in control. I could be totally wrong. Obviously, I am wrong sometimes. You can go back and watch my forecast and see when I was right and when I was wrong. The beautiful thing about my channel is that you can go back and see all of the video evidence. If we push up, we break the high, yeah, you could be getting in long on a 5-minute chart up to this 4 hour supply at 42.11. Kind of a hidden supply zone here, but I think it's definitely an area we could see some hesitation off of. I don't think we're going to get a huge move. I'm not going to predict a massive move off of a supply zone like this when all the trends on the higher time frames look like this. They're all trending up. So I'm not going to predict a massive move like this. What I'm going to say is I think we could hesitate here. I think we could maybe see a push down, maybe get a 1-1 move before we end up breaking it to the upside. So this supply is going to be good for our profit margin, right? If you are long, this supply is good for our profit margin. And then once the supply is hit, you might want to look to take off your trades for longs, look to take profit or be aggressive with your trade management. That would be fine. And then once it's hit as well, you could try to catch a quick trade 1-to-1. That's reasonable if you want. Again, you just got to be aggressive with trade management to understand you're trading against the higher time frame trends. So it's a pretty low odds situation if you do. But again, if you look for a quick 1-to-1, I think that's completely reasonable. Another option is to wait for the supply zone to be hit, look for confirmation on a 15-minute time frame. I just did a whole 1.5-hour video on confirmation trading. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that video is going to break down everything for you. So make sure you watch that after watching this entire forecast. Moving on to the forecast for the S&P 500. This is pretty much my third time doing the S&P 500 in the weekly forecast, so I hope you guys have been enjoying it. Let me know in the comments down below if you have. On the weekly time frame, obviously all trends are pointing to the upside here on the S&P 500. I was hoping for a dip buying opportunity this much. Doesn't look like we are getting that though, as we just went to all-time highs. If you look at a daily time frame, obviously massive manipulation going on here. But the good news is we have a very nice upper trend line, which is fantastic. We haven't really had an upper trend line until all the way back here in 2024. So the fact that we have an upward trend line now, yes, we've had an upward trend, and that's great. Obviously, longs have been preferred the entire time, but now we have a viable upward trend line, in my opinion. And this is going to be our daily, not our daily guide, but our guide on our daily time frame. This is going to hold up price, in my opinion. This is definitely a very, very bullish sign, especially since we've gotten kind of a correction here. I think all signs are pointing to the upside here on the S&P 500. I really wouldn't be shorting this pair, this chart at all right now. You guys know, some of you know we cut that trade here, not the entire thing, and then we got another reaction off of it again. I personally don't short the S&P. That's one of my only trading rules where I I don't trade a certain direction. So I personally didn't catch that. I only trade this chart long. That is it. We have a nice 1 hour trend line. This is going to be our guide for day trading long. So if you are a day trader, anywhere 15 to a 1 minute time frame, I would say, as long as this 1 hour trend line's holding, you could definitely look for longs. I prefer 5 minute. I think that's a good sweet spot between the 15 and the 1 minute. So as long as this trend line's holding, I think 5 minute time frame longs are good. And when I say that, it doesn't have to be supply and demand zones. It can be whatever strategy you trade. I'm just saying I would draw this exact trend line on your chart, and as long as that's holding, the longs on that time frame are going to be very, very good in my opinion. On the 4 hour time frame, something that happened that I really, really love. So not only did we remove an opposing supply zone, not only was the opposing supply zone tested, I like that it was right at the high as well, because now we removed an all-time high as well. And in my opinion, that was all removed by this area of demand down below at 67.16. I think it's a great 4 hour demand zone for a pullback long entry. You can see nice trend lines to the upside as well. So if we do get a pullback, right, we break the 1 hour trend line, that's fine. We still have to remain bullish, again, because the higher time frame trends are up. And if we do get a pullback, that's going to be my target for a potential long trade opportunity at 67.16. It's about as good as it's going to get as far as zones get. It's definitely not my favorite zone. I would have preferred to see another explosive candle here, but it's about as good as we're going to get right now. Decent basing, decent move away. I like that it removed a proven supply zone and an all-time high. In my opinion, that is the dip buying opportunity I'm seeing right now on the S&P 500. All right, on to the forecast for the USDJPY. We're going to start with the daily time frame here. The weekly chart basically looks like this. It's all over the place. No real direction or anything to go off of. Kind of the opposite of the daily time frame here. You guys know we removed this daily supply, proven supply. That was removed by this little single candle area of demand, hidden demand zone. This was called out a couple weekly Forex forecasts ago. So you can go back, and you can see on the screen right now, but you can go back and see all the evidence you need. And actually, one of the members caught a beautiful 1 to 6 trade off of that demand zone as we came off of it. So congrats to him on a beautiful trade. And as we push up, we're approaching the highs, so we got to be a little bit careful buying right now. The time to be buying was down there, guys, not really up here. It's not really the highest odds situation. Not only that, I really don't see any trading setups at all right now. So we do have a nice 1 hour trend, and as long as this trend's holding, you could look for longs. Like I said, on a 5 minute time frame, I think that's completely reasonable, but I just don't really see any zones here. Now that I look at it again, okay, we had supply there. We might have a zone right here. I hate doing live analysis like this, but we might actually have a zone right here. And now that I look at it again, in my opinion, that does just barely qualify as a move away. And I kind of like that this to me, sometimes this points to where the demand is. If we just add an arrow here, sometimes it points to where the demand is. So in my opinion, this could be a pretty risky setup, but it could be pretty rewarding in my opinion. So if you are bullish, that would be kind of our pullback entry long. If you don't feel confident in it, I personally think looking for confirmation on a 5 minute time frame in there is going to be good. So again, if you don't feel confident, just look for confirmation. I think that's going to be a much better situation for you. And then if we remove this 4 hour high right here, then we'll have a beautiful 4 hour trend line, and then that's going to be our guide for longs. But I want to prove that we can get a trend line first. I'm not saying get a trend line and buy the breakout. I'm saying we can break the high first, prove there's a trend, wait for a pullback, get in long, and then continue to get in long. I just want to see this higher move first to give me more confidence in the trading setup. All right, on to the forecast for the GBPUSD. The higher time frames here, which, and as far as I look at things, are the daily and the weekly time frame. It's very tricky right now because yes, we have a weekly trend. We are in a weekly demand, but it's a tested demand zone. So weekly trend makes me bullish. The fact that we are in a weekly demand makes me bullish, but the fact that it's already been tested very deeply makes me a little bit more bearish, or I would say a little bit less bullish, I would say. And then the fact that on the daily time frame, we clearly broke this daily downward trend here, and upward trend, and reacted off of a daily supply zone. To me, that's a bearish sign. So it's a very tricky chart to read on the higher time frames right now. If you look over here on the 1 hour chart, you can see we caught a beautiful 1 hour supply zone trade, picture perfect, low, easily targeted there. And Ryan from the Discord group caught this beautiful 1 hour supply zone setup as well. And this was called out in our daily market breakdown video for the Dime members. If you want to trade alongside myself and the members, join the Diamond membership, where you will have access to the 38-page supply and demand zone PDF, which will be your complete trading guide, the daily market breakdown videos, which are forecasts that I release every single night for the members to trade alongside myself, step-by-step video lessons A to Z covering everything you need to know on supply and demand trading, the Sunday strategy Zoom session where members submit homework, and it's an interactive 1-hour call where we go over all of your homework and every trading related question, private access to myself inside of our private Discord group where I answer all of your trading related questions, and finally the Sunday live stream forecast where we break down over 30 markets together. And it's not just me. Here are some of the members and some of their trades they've been taking lately, absolutely killing it. And we also have some amazing reviews from some of the past members sharing their experience within the group. So if you're ready to trade alongside myself and the community, join the Diamond membership today. Links in the description down below. So we have a nice 1-hour trend that is continuing to hold as we speak. And we did create a new supply zone. I have mixed feelings about this supply zone. I like that we removed a little demand zone here. I don't know if you guys can see it. I like that we made a new low. The issue is this weird wick makes me very, very nervous. So a pullback up to this supply, it could be good. I personally prefer to look for shorts on a 5-minute time frame in there, looking for confirmation, just because I'm not too sure about the zone. This zone, however, that was a great set and forget. Nice tight basing, very explosive move away. I like the move away here. The issue, again, if we just zoom in, just look at this wick. It's huge, and then this wick as well makes me very, very nervous. So again, confirmation on a 5-minute chart would be much, much preferred in this situation. And as long as this 1-hour downward trend line's holding, you could just be looking for 5-minute time frame shorts anyways, but it's going to be higher odds at a higher time frame zone like that 1-hour chart. Something to consider as well is on this 4-hour time frame, we have a pretty good 4-hour demand zone down below. This demand zone, how I see things, removed this downward trend line. We did create some sort of liquidity here. The demand zone is down below. Depending on how you drew this, it would have been hit. I recently did tighten it up, so I might even tighten up just a little bit more, something like that, just to keep things kind of consistent here. But if we do get a pullback down the zone, I think we could see a decent move off of it. Maybe a 2-to-1 max is what I could expect to go off that zone. The reason is if we had a weekly trend and a daily trend, I would say, look, the zone could be good for a 5-to-1 potentially. But the fact that the higher time frames are kind of indecisive right now makes me a little bit nervous about this one. So if you are short, I would look to maybe take some profit off your shorts as we contact this demand, maybe switch to a quick long trade 1-to-1, maybe a 2-to-1 setup here on the GBPUSD. On to the forecast for the USDCAD. Beautiful trend to the upside here in the weekly time frame. Trend line holding as well. Weekly demand is in control. It's really all signs to the upside here on the USDCAD, especially on the daily time frame. We have a beautiful daily upward trend. However, if you look at this in some sort of like channel right here, obviously we are at the upper ends of the channel, so we could expect to see more downward pressure here on the USDCAD, and that's why we caught that beautiful 1-hour supply zone trade. This was a couple weeks ago, or a week and a half ago or whatever. Beautiful move off that supply. We pushed up for a second time, definitely not trading the second test, and we pushed down. So clearly a lot of supply up there. We created a 1-hour downward trend. That was a very, very bearish sign in my opinion. We broke this 1-hour downward trend, and actually I didn't realize, but if I adjusted that, which is right, then we have demand down here. And this demand currently is in control. I wanted to draw this demand earlier, but I didn't realize this wick, and that made me adjust the trend line, making this the demand zone. So we actually have a demand zone here. I usually don't do that, but in this instance, I was actually wrong. This trend line needed to be adjusted. So if this 1-hour demand is, as long as it's holding, 5-minute time frame longs are good. I was kind of bummed out I couldn't draw this demand because beautiful explosive move away, but again, going into my chain analysis, I'm not going to get into it. But beautiful demand zone. So 5-minute time frame longs are good as long as this 1-hour demand zone is being respected. It is making me a little bit nervous though, because we have a way better demand zone down here on the 1-hour chart. So if we do push down, if we do break this demand zone, I think the bigger move could happen down there at 1.39. So if you do decide to get in long at the zone, I personally think looking to be aggressive with trade management is better, and then less aggressive with trade management at this demand zone down below would make more sense to me. So a couple good zones here on the USDCAD, and obviously if we push up and break this supply, it's a very, very proven area of supply. So any demand there is going to be absolutely fantastic. So that's what I'll be waiting for if we do push up. But for now, as long as this 1-hour demand is holding, holding. 5-minute time frame longs are good, and if we break it, that's fine. You have a very nice 1 hour demand zone that's just sitting down below there on the USD CAD. And on the 4-hour chart, we have a nice 4-hour downward trend. So if you are bearish on the USD CAD, you think, wow, Kevin, you're so wrong. As long as we keep getting momentum to the downside here, you could technically still be looking for shorts on a 15-minute time frame. On to the forecast for the AUDUSD. This weekly chart, I've been showing it for a long time. It's just absolutely terrible. There's absolutely nothing I can get from this chart other than it looks really bad. So it's very, very tricky to be trading it based off of the weekly time frame. However, on the daily chart, we have a daily downward trend. We tapped into this daily area of demand, and it made me laugh. We actually caught, as a group, we caught a beautiful trade off this zone. You can watch last week's forecast. I talked about it. Somebody commented in last week's forecast, said, I saw you adjust the zone up here because they think every zone has to be drawn body to wick like that, and I seen you adjust it so that it tapped in. I thought that was so funny, and especially since you can just go back and watch my forecast and see that I had drawn the zone like that back when they removed this trend line over here. It's just funny that people can see the video evidence and they choose not to believe it. So don't be that guy. We have a daily demand control. It's looking pretty bullish. However, this downward trend line could definitely take effect and push down. So we got to be very, very cautious of that daily downward trend line, guys. I cannot stress that enough. On this 4-hour chart, the sideways price action is very, very evident here. This is pretty junk in my opinion. There's really not a whole lot to go off of. You might notice this purple box down below. That is liquidity inside of that demand zone with this older demand zone down below. And there's even a better one down here. So it's kind of a weird situation on the Aussie. I think all of these zones are pretty good, especially since we've created liquidity down here. So if we do push down, I think at this demand zone below this one at 0.643, I think it's a high probability area for a long trade. How much we're going to get out of it, a little bit tricky, especially since the daily downward trend can kind of push price down. So as long as that daily trend line's holding, any longs down here, it's going to be aggressive trade management, meaning 1-to-1, 2-to-1 trades. You can always get 5-to-1 trades out of those, depending on how quick you move your stop loss and everything. But I would just be more aggressive at the demand zone down below if you decide to get in long down there. What I think we could also be seeing here is on this 1 hour time frame. I've been so patient. It's just crazy. My patience has definitely been testing me here. We have a nice hidden 1 hour supply at 0.653 over here. And I've been waiting for the supply zone to be hit. And patience is a huge part of trading. And if you don't master patience and all the other trading psychology parts, you're not going to make it. So if you need help with that, check out my podcast, the Stoic Trading Psychology Podcast. Anywhere you get your podcast, it will give you great help for your trading psychology. Made a YouTube channel for it as well. So make sure you check it out and let me know what you guys think. On the 1 hour chart here, I love that today we wicked into this liquidity. That proves to me there is resistance here and liquidity above. So as far as this 1 hour chart goes, as long as this 1 hour trend line's holding, you could be looking for 5-minute time frame longs to target this liquidity. And then once this liquidity has been targeted and we hit the supply, then we could look for a nice short trade. And the beautiful thing about this short trade is that it's with the daily downward trend. And the other beautiful thing about the short trade is if it gets removed and we lose, I'm not going to throw my mouse. I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to give up, right? What I'm going to do is realize, hey, that's a significant area of supply that was just removed, and it will probably be part of removing the daily downward trend. So any demand there, I'm going to be hopping on that demand zone for a long trade. So I welcome this supply being removed. I just hope I can get a nice trade off of it first if it does get removed. So that's what I'd be doing here on the Aussie. Nice trend to the upside. I would definitely be looking for longs right now on a 5-minute chart. Just monitor this trend line to target the liquidity above. But again, once we start to contact this supply and target the liquidity, that's when I'd probably look to wrap up our long trades and maybe switch to a potential short. Moving on to the USDCHF. I'm not going to bother zooming into the weekly or to the daily because there's really not a whole lot going on at all. Very tested daily demand, very tested weekly demand. It's very difficult to predict what is going to be taking place based off of that. On the 1 hour time frame, though, we did have a nice 1 hour trend. Things were looking pretty bullish. You can see we got our 2 touch points are down here and here. We got a nice reaction off of our trend line. And not only that, we did create a supply zone at 0.79. It's as good as it's going to get as far as a supply zone removing an upper trend line. I think it's a pretty good zone. We do actually have, I didn't realize this. Sometimes these wicks my eyes just cannot see a wick. I don't know if anybody else has a problem with that, but we do have a 1 hour trend line, and as long as that 1 hour trend line's holding, I think you could justify 5-minute time frame shorts. I actually think this trend line will break because we have supply above. I think if we get a pullback of the supply, I think the supply could be good for a 1-to-1, maybe a 2-to-1 trade. All I'm going to say is I'd be aggressive with trade management at this supply, and I'm going to explain here why. So again, I'm going to go off this time frame. As long as this 1 hour trend line's holding, 5-minute time frame shorts are good. Pullbacks up to the supply could be good for a quick risk to reward trade, aggressive trade management. Why aggressive trade management? Because we have a clear area of liquidity resistance up above and a trend line liquidity as well. So if we do push up here, I think the bigger move is going to take place off of this area of supply at 0.799. So I think that is where we could see that bigger move to the downside. That's where I think we could see our 3-to-1, 4-to-1, maybe 5-to-1 trade target this low. That's where I think that bigger move is going to be got at. So that's what I'd be waiting for on the 4-hour chart. And look, if you think we're not going to pull up to that supply, that's fine. As long as this 4-hour downward trend line's holding, 15-minute time frame shorts are good. But hopefully my explanation of why I'd be more aggressive with that 1 hour trade than this 4-hour trade, hopefully that's all making sense. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Any questions at all, just leave a comment. I literally respond to every single comment, so don't hesitate to leave one. Alrighty, on to the forecast for crude oil. So on the weekly time frame here, we broke our weekly area of demand, and that actually left us with supply above. I just totally forgot to draw it. Kind of a weird supply zone, but that is our weekly supply above. Kind of irrelevant for now. Just wanted to draw it. And we had liquidity down here. I drew this purple box, and we reacted off of it this past week. This is not a trade for me. I want to make that very clear. I don't trade support, but this is support in my opinion. I trade demand, and I love when my demand zone is sitting right below support where all the stop losses are going to be. It's a good weekly zone. It is old, right? So it makes me a little bit nervous, but the fact that we are creating liquidity here makes me more confident in that demand zone. So any pullback below this liquidity at 53.85, that weekly demand zone is going to be great for looking for swing trading long opportunities. On the daily time frame here, we are clearly targeting the upper range of this downward channel here. You can see the downward channel with our trend line. I think we could maybe hesitate around this trend line. So we could expect maybe another push up on oil this week before we end up pushing back down. That is kind of what I'm getting at this week. And on the 4-hour chart, I mean, it's really evident what's going on. We had a nice 4-hour downward trend. All signs are pointing to the upside here on crude oil. We might have a zone here. It's really tricky. One of the members was talking about it, but I don't know. It doesn't make me feel too comfortable. There is a little hidden supply above. This would be a pretty aggressive trade. So what I would like to see is resistance form before it, then a pullback to that supply at 64.78. That could kind of be our set and forget 4-hour short trade in the overall weekly downward trend. Makes me a little bit nervous because it's been so long since we've come back to it. But I think it could be very rewarding for a potential set and forget trade. Again, since the trends are down, since I think we will be targeting this weekly liquidity, my mid to long term perspective is to the downside. It is bearish. So on this 1-hour chart, if you're bullish, this is the only demand zone I'm seeing for a long trade at 61.16. And again, that's a very aggressive long trade based on the fact that it is counter trend. But it's as good as it's going to get for a counter trend trade. I mean, nice tight basing, very explosive move away, remove 2 supply zones in my opinion, how I see things. So it's a pretty good 1-hour zone. Me personally, I would rather wait for that to be removed, hopefully leaving us with a great 1-hour supply zone for a shorting opportunity. So all going to revolve around this 1-hour demand zone as far as the 1-hour chart view goes here on crude oil. All right, on to the forecast for Bitcoin. If you guys aren't following me on Instagram, make sure you guys give me a follow over on Instagram at FX Telepath. I don't post too much over there, but you guys might find some of my posts interesting, and I do post educational shorts and content over there as well. On the weekly time frame here, nice trend to the upside. Obviously, we did break this demand zone last week. Any pullback down this weekly zone, I think at 97.938, it could be good for a potential long trading opportunity. Now, I'm using Bitstamp on Bitcoin. It seemed to be the most cleanest chart. It's what I've always used for analyzing Bitcoin. And the same guy that talked smack to me last week. He commented saying something, I'm not even using the right Bitcoin chart, and that shows that I don't trade Bitcoin. And he's literally right. I do not trade Bitcoin. This is purely for you guys. I've invested in Bitcoin. I have bought Bitcoin, but I do not trade Bitcoin. Okay, so I don't know why I'm not using the right chart. Maybe you guys can chime in. I don't know. In my opinion, I think it's fine. But again, I am pretty ignorant on crypto, guys. I will happily admit that. But as long as this weekly trend's holding, I'm going to be pretty bullish here on Bitcoin. On the daily chart, though, if we do push up, we have a very good daily supply zone that we're going to have to get past as well. And I think it could be used for a nice short trade if you're bearish on Bitcoin as we approach that high. I personally think since the weekly trends are up that we will break this supply, but it doesn't mean we can't get a quick short trade before breaking it. So it could be a good area of daily supply there for potential long trades. Now, on the 4-hour chart, there's really a whole lot of nothing going on. Yeah, I just don't love this chart. If we can break this high right here, that'll give us that nice 1-hour trend, or sorry, nice 4-hour trend. And then at that point, that's going to be a pretty bullish sign. Then we could continue to day trade long. So for now on Bitcoin, guys, I would just wait for this high to be removed to prove that price is going up. And then not only to prove that that's going up, then we will have our trend line guide for our long trades, and then I think longs could be a good opportunity. There is this demand zone back here I just noticed. It's not bad. I like that I removed a trend line. It's just very old. It was created in June, so it's just kind of old, but I did notice this potential liquidity down here. So I would ignore this zone unless we can get a reaction off of this liquidity. If we can prove there's support here, then I like getting a quick long trade at that zone at 101.484. If you guys want access to my full-length forecast, join the Diamond membership where you will have access to that as well as my daily market forecast, the full course supply and demand PDF, and much, much more. Make sure you guys subscribe so you can catch next week's forecast as well. And I always appreciate a like. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.